He had already decided he wouldn't stay longer than 10 minutes. The restaurant was elegant, quiet in a way that made every small,
Timing.
awkward moment feel louder.
Ayos lang.
Crystal glasses, soft piano music, carefully measured smiles from staff, everything designed to impress. But for him, it only made the situation worse. Across the table sat a woman who looked perfect on paper, educated, polished, confident, the kind of match his assistant insisted was ideal, yet nothing felt right. Every sentence between them felt forced, like two strangers reading from scripts that didn't match. He checked his watch for the third time. "I think we both know this isn't working," she finally said, her voice calm but distant. He nodded slightly, relieved she said it first. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," he replied, already preparing to stand. That's when it happened. A quiet voice, almost a whisper, came from beside him. "If I were you, I'd stay." He turned, slightly annoyed at the interruption. It was the waiter, a man in his early 30s, simple uniform, tired eyes, but something about his expression felt different. Not intrusive, not careless, just certain. The CEO frowned. "Excuse me," the waiter gave a small, apologetic smile. "Sorry, sir, didn't mean to interfere. Just sometimes leaving early costs more than staying a little longer." Before he could respond, the waiter stepped back, continuing his work like nothing had happened. Strange, very strange. The CEO sat back down, more out of curiosity than anything else. His date raised an eyebrow. That was unusual. "Yes," he said slowly, but his mind was no longer on her. Something about those words stayed with him, leaving early costs more than staying. Minutes passed. The conversation remained dry, but he noticed something he hadn't before. His date wasn't nervous, she was distracted. Her eyes flickered to her phone too often. Her replies felt delayed, like she was thinking about something else entirely. Then her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't hide it quickly enough. A name flashed on the screen, one he recognized, his business partner. A cold feeling settled in his chest. He didn't react immediately. Years of corporate negotiations had taught him patience. Instead, he leaned back slightly, observing. "You seem busy," he said casually. "Just work," she replied too quickly. "Work, at 9 p.m. During a blind date." He smiled faintly, but his mind was racing now. Across the room, the waiter moved quietly between tables, but his eyes briefly met the CEO's again, not interfering, not signaling. Just watching like he already knew, the CEO decided to test something. "Funny," he said, keeping his tone light, "I had a deal almost finalized today. But I'm not sure I trust the people involved anymore." For a split second, her expression changed. That was all he needed. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't a date, it was a setup. A distraction, maybe even a test, or worse, a planned manipulation involving his own partner. He stood up slowly this time, not rushed, not emotional. "I think you're right," he said calmly. "This isn't working." She looked relieved, too relieved, and that confirmed everything. As he walked away, his mind was no longer on the failed date but on the bigger picture: betrayal, strategy. Trust. Near the exit, the waiter stood quietly. The CEO stopped. "You knew something," he said, not as a question. The waiter shook his head slightly. "I didn't know, sir. I just noticed." "Noticed what?" The waiter hesitated for a moment. "People who are genuine, they stay present." She wasn't here. "And when people aren't present, they're usually somewhere they shouldn't be." Simple words, but powerful. The CEO studied him carefully. "What's your name?" "Samir, sir." "Single dad?" the CEO asked, noticing the worn ring mark on his finger, the fatigue in his eyes. Samir smiled faintly. "Yes, sir, long shifts, every day." There was no complaint in his voice, no self-pity, just truth. The CEO nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said, and walked out, but he didn't forget. Not the warning, not the observation, and definitely not the man who chose to speak when he didn't have to. The next morning, the atmosphere inside the company felt different. Cold, tense, calculated. The CEO sat at the head of the conference table, silent as his executives presented updates. His business partner, confident as always, sat across from him, unaware of what had shifted overnight. "Everything looks good," the partner said smoothly. "We're ready to sign." The CEO leaned back. "Are we?" he asked calmly, a slight pause. "Yes," the partner replied, though his voice carried the smallest hint of uncertainty now. The CEO slid a file across the table. "Then explain this." Inside were transaction records, communications, small inconsistencies that when combined told a clear story, a story of manipulation, of hidden intentions, of betrayal. The room fell silent, the partner's confident expression cracked. "This is careful," the CEO interrupted quietly. "Think before you speak." For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. What was meant to be a smooth deal turned into an exposure. Within hours, decisions were made, positions changed, trust redefined. And just like that, a betrayal that could have cost millions, maybe more, was stopped. Not by a board member, not by an executive, but by a quiet observation from someone no one was supposed to notice. That evening, the CEO returned to the same restaurant. Same table, same quiet atmosphere, same waiter. Samir looked surprised to see him. "Sir, welcome back." The CEO sat down, this time with no date, no pressure. "Sit for a moment," he said. Samir hesitated. "I'm working, I know," the CEO replied gently. "Just a minute." Reluctantly, Samir sat across from him. "You saved me yesterday," the CEO said. Samir shook his head immediately. "No, sir, I just said a few words." "Exactly," the CEO replied. "You said them when no one else would." Silence filled the space, but it wasn't awkward this time, it was meaningful. "What do you want in life, Samir?" the CEO asked. The question caught him off guard. "I just want stability," he said honestly. "For my child, a chance to give them a better life. No grand dreams, no unrealistic goals, just responsibility." The CEO smiled slightly. "Come work for me." Samir blinked, unsure if he heard correctly. "Sir, I'm just a waiter." "No," the CEO said firmly. "You're someone who notices what others ignore. Someone who speaks when it matters, that's rare." Samir looked down, overwhelmed. "I don't have experience." "I can teach skills," the CEO replied. "I can't teach integrity." That sentence changed everything. Tears formed in Samir's eyes, but he held them back. "For my child," he whispered. "For your future," the CEO corrected. Months later, the transformation was undeniable. Samir wasn't just surviving anymore, he was growing, learning, leading in his own quiet way. He never became loud, never arrogant. Never forgot where he came from. Inside the company, people started noticing something unusual. The CEO trusted him, not because of his position, but because of his character. And slowly, that trust influenced others. Decisions became more thoughtful. People listened more. The culture shifted, not through policies, but through example. The real story wasn't about a failed date, or a business deal, or even betrayal. It was about a moment. A quiet moment where someone chose to care, to speak. To guide without expecting anything in return. Because sometimes, the people who change your life aren't the ones sitting across from you in power. They're the ones standing quietly beside you, whispering the words you didn't know you needed to hear. And in a world full of noise, it's often the softest voice that saves you from the loudest mistake.